2013.
Hello, and welcome to Walk the Talk Show with Waylon Lewis, coming to you live from Hotel Elephant, my cozy little home in Boulder, Colorado. I am here, honored to be here with local Boulder celebrity, and now an international Boulder celebrity, Ash Beckham. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. We weren't sure, I wasn't sure if we'd met before, but...
Small town. I mean,
yeah,
I feel like
we finally did it.
See each other around you. Probably served you eggs.
Yeah, many times. But then I became vegan. I probably went a lot less.
Yeah.
So this being Boulder, we're going to start with some weird spiritual stuff. Is that okay with you? It's all fundamentally about touching in with your own basic goodness, which everyone has, which connects with equality on a fundamental level. So we start with a bow of mutual respect and respect to all sentient beings, no matter whether they're anything. And a reminder of our mission in our life. So you can just take a good posture. You can connect with the earth and the heavens above. Earth is the realm of practicality and getting stuff done, and heavens is the realm of vision and your mission in life. And if you're watching, you can join in. So just take a good posture, connect with your breath, and give it away. And then we just meditate for 1 minute. Meditation isn't meant to be a big hippie thing. It's really just connecting with the present moment. So again, you can take a good posture and relax. Find your breath in and out. As Ash just said before the conversation started, if you find yourself not being mindful, that's totally okay. That's why we practice mindfulness. So if you find yourself thinking about lunch or dinner or an argument you had or something you're fantasizing about, good or bad, happy or sad, doesn't matter. You just acknowledge that thought by labeling it thinking. You have a thought, you just say, thinking, and return your attention to the breath. Well, thank you. Thank you, Ash.
Thanks.
So I'm super excited for this one. We've been talking with a lot of like spiritual types or yoga types or politicians or adventurers, a wide range. But other than our congressman, who you know, I think Jared Polis, we really haven't touched much on equal rights, which is a fundamental, it's one of our 12 areas of focus with Elephant. First of all, I just kind of the genesis story, which is so inspiring. Our mutual friend Andrew Hyde and many others have created this kind of community event called Ignite, and that was the beginning of all of this sort of change in your career, at least.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So I had gone to in December of 2012. I went to an Ignite, had heard about it for years, ended up going with a buddy of mine. We just last minute got tickets right out in front of the Boulder Theater. It was very just organic. We had these great seats. Like it's one of the things that just worked out. Yeah. The first guy that went was this local guy that talked about his struggles with weight loss. And I just fell in love with this guy. He was just so quirky and authentic and weird and awkward and awesome. And you're like, A, people don't talk about that in Boulder. And B,
right, we're the fittest.
Men don't talk about that.
We're like the fittest town in the U.S.
Exactly.
Men never are comfortable talking about.
And this guy was just so great and compelling, and he just had the audience and had this like message that you never hear was kind of what he did. Cool. And the rest of the speakers the rest of the night were great, but this one guy just resonated with me. And so I was like, I hadn't done anything kind of creative in that realm in a while. And
had you ever done public speaking?
You know, I like ran for a class president when I was a junior in high school.
That's good experience.
Did my sister
nothing tougher than talking in front of people in junior high.
Right, exactly. I mean, it couldn't have been. I had a perm and glasses and braces. Like it was, I had a rough go of it there.
Okay.
In 8th grade, but so I did that, and then like a toast at a wedding. You know, that was it. I mean, but I would stand in front of my buddies and tell a story at a bar. You know, but that was about.
That's still pretty good.
That was about it. And so I was like, I really want to do that, and wanted to kind of do it with a friend. I was like, oh, it'd be so great if we could do 2 people. And then I just kind of threw it out there and applied and didn't even know what I was going to talk about. And Julia Banana, who owns the South Side, they were taking nominations. So somebody else had to nominate you. So I was like, hey, make me sound smart. She's like, well, what are you going to talk about?
So at the time, for those who don't know Southside, you were working at this beloved diner.
Yeah, the diner tab, best friend of mine owns it.
Which is a very welcoming environment for...
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just anybody and everybody. And it lets you be yourself and gives you an environment where every personality of every server there is just accentuated in that one.
Right.
Makes it, it's like a mosaic of a bunch of different folks that just all work together. It all
great,
works there.
great eggs.
And also great eggs. And good tofu. Now that you're
That's
vegan.
more my thing, yeah.
Exactly. So I did that. And so I was like, hey, make me sound smart. And she knows Andrew too. And she's like, what are you going to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. And then I came back in and I was like, well, to get up in front of that many people, it had to be something I was passionate about. So I was like, I don't know, something gay, maybe something. She's like, too late, I already sent it in. And then about 2 weeks later, I get the call. And I had expected it to be in like May. This is January.
So she just made up your topic, kind of?
She didn't really make up a topic. She just was like, hey, this is, a friend of mine that, makes me laugh, makes me cry, is just like, would really have something to say to the community and kind of speaks for the Boulder community. I still to this day don't know what she wrote. But then I got the call and they're like, hey, come on. So we go and we do this really great, it's a great group of people, but it's very like, a little bit tech-centric is just the nature of it because of the industry. And so we go and we have our first meeting and I'm so nervous. And it's in a boardroom. And I've been in Boulder for 15 years. And so I feel comfortable in Boulder, but more in the, food end of it, not like the, and I was like, I didn't know we had boardrooms in Boulder. So we're sitting there and I have, everybody goes in and I literally pull out of my bag a clip, like a physical clipboard. And all these people are like, hey, what the hell's a clipboard?
They look up from their like
iPads and they're like, everybody's got the newest version of everything that's like in their like Google glasses or whatever. And
I had the newest clipboard.
I had a new pen. I mean, I was like, I need this is like how I take notes.
Right.
So anyway, so I everybody had done, and nothing was very political, really personal to all the folks that were doing it, but mine was political, and I did it, and it kind of like fell on deaf ears.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, of course.
For people who don't know why we're going through this, what I find fascinating story, Ash, meteoric rise, TEDx talk, one of the most popular TED Talks ever featured on the La La La, and we're going to get into all the issues around equality in depth in a very un-PC and very personal way. Right. So coming back to the story.
Right, totally. So so I go through it and then, I was nervous and had kind of filled the room with a lot of friends at the Boulder Theater, and they were live streaming it, so a couple of my friends from back Ohio where I'm from watched, and I expected that to kind of be it, and it was great, and people were really kind and generous and enjoyed it. And I feel like there was this kind of response from my friends who were LGBTQ because the topic was removing the word so gay, or the phrase so gay, as a pejorative in our lexicon. So there's other words that have kind of fallen by the wayside, and so now we, this should, and it's just how do we get it there?
So let's talk about so gay for 1 second, if we can. So what I love about that video, number one, is you're very clearly speaking directly to everybody, and not only to them, to their, what Buddhists would call their basic goodness.
Sure.
You don't make anyone feel bad about anything. But you also explain why calling something so gay is a problem.
Right.
But what is appropriate? That you also, which is kind of interesting, you say some things you can say, this is so gay.
Sure, that it isn't. There isn't a negative connotation. A lot of people don't find a negative connotation. If somebody calls me gay, that's not an insult to me. It's a defining characteristic of who I am. It's part of who I am, not my entire identity.
You're not a thing. Identity. You're a person who.
Exactly. But a rainbow flag, or I would say to my friends, if I saw somebody walking down the street in their outfit, it would be a compliment coming from me. But when it has that kind of negative tinge or that lesser, that second-class part to it, and there are plenty of people, especially in Boulder, that have friends that identify as LGBTQ, but at the same time, they use that word because it's just kind of part of what we say. Yeah. It's just socially acceptable, and people just don't know that it hurts. And the part that was the most formative for me after that talk, immediately after, when we all went out to get beers, was a guy that came up to me who was like, male-born, male guy, probably 28, just like a dude. Sweet guy, I'm sure he was lovely. And he came up to me and he's like, I've been that guy. Like, I've said that. And I didn't know that it hurt people, and I'm not going to say it anymore. And that, to me, was like, it wasn't this battle cry kind of from the community. It was affecting change in the way people thought of things, because when they know they're hurting people or offending people, they stop doing it. But if they don't know, then it's, you know, it's harder to stop, because it doesn't sound in your frame of reference of how that could be offensive or would be offensive. Because, of course, I have gay friends, so I don't mean it in a bad way, but you don't know who's in the room that it affects.
So this is such a profound lesson, I think, for all of us, whatever we're trying to do to affect positive change, whether it's like climate change or civil rights or equality, is you did it without being aggressive. Like, why does being kind of judging at people, why does that not work?
Well, I think that people get really, people just turn to defensive.
Right.
And that's just a kind of a natural reaction. When you feel like you're being attacked, you defend
Right.
what you're speaking about, or you justify it, or it doesn't become relatable. And the argument isn't because this is the right thing to do, it's because I say it's the right thing to do. And how many times does somebody tell you something, and just
Right.
because you're like, no.
So you're not saying what, you're saying how or why.
Yeah, and
really
it's also, it's making it, in mindfulness, is making it a very conscious choice for you. I'm telling you how what you say affects me.
Right.
Now it's kind of off of me. If you want to continue to say that, knowing the effect that it has, that's totally fine.
Right.
You make those decisions, but you're going to consciously know the effect that it has. And then that's my work, isn't to tell you what to do or why it's right or wrong. It's very personal and vulnerable to say, it hurts my feelings when you say that.
Because what it's communicating is you think gay is a pejorative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, if something is so gay, if it's not a compliment, then that tells anybody that's listening that gay is then this like second class version of it, or not as strong, or not as lovable, or not as right, or not as normal, or any of these other words. And it's also, there's so many other words that you can use that's just really, really easy to throw it in there, but it's not actually what you mean. So it's kind of like detaching from this mindfulness. It's like, you know, when people, and you know, I use the F word plenty, but when you really think about when you're...
By F word, you mean fuck.
Oh, I don't know. Can we do that?
Yeah. I think we just did.
When you say that, you fill it in because it's like a placeholder. It's not actually the word that you want. Yeah, sometimes it's for
you're not saying
emphasis.
Sex.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's kind of that you kind of detach in our very quick, you have to be so quick to post things, say things, tweet things, comebacks, all that stuff, that it's a really easy word to just toss in, because everybody kind of knows what it means without, like, what are the words that you're using actually mean, and what are you conveying?
So the hardest part of that speech you gave for me as a viewer was the very end of it, where you say, you even acknowledged, like, in that moment when someone had said that's so gay to you, that you hadn't challenged them on it, but you gave them the, what's his name? Expression.
Oh my, I can't think
like
of him.
70s TV show guy.
Yes, we're talking about Willis.
You looked at
Gary
him,
Coleman.
Gary Coleman, thank you.
Right,
You went, you know, but like, how can we, I guess it's in the same way, without judging the person who said something that's unskillful or inappropriate, you just kind of say, hey, when you say that, it makes me think you think gay is a bad thing. You know, it's important for us to challenge each other.
Right, and I think that part of that, a huge part, like in that scenario and in my gym, I'm very out. That's a very easy thing for me to do. But if I was in the closet and I was going to challenge someone, like, I'm essentially outing myself by making that challenge. And that's why allies are so critical in this, is that if you came up to that same guy and you know, he knows that you identify as straight and whatever, to be like, hey man, it's just not cool. Like, I have friends that are gay, and it hurts my feelings and their feelings when you do it. And it isn't like you're saying it wrong because it's offensive. I think there's that personal connection of, it makes me feel this, which is so vulnerable and so out there, especially when you feel like you're being hurt, to go to someone and say that. And, you know, I don't know, sometimes you probably get sucker punched, but the vast majority of the times when I've had that experience, and you don't have to call somebody out, you know, it doesn't have to be this like zinger that you get somebody with. You don't have to have the perfect words. You just pull them aside one-on-one and be like, hey man, you know what, it hurts my feelings when you say that. I just need you to know. Not, don't ever say it again. Not, you know what kind of,
not your
Neanderthal. Exactly. Because I know this dude, the guy that did it wasn't. He's awesome. He's a really good guy. He just was giving his buddy a hard time. It was like a dig, and he didn't. And if he knew it would have hurt my feelings, he never would have said it in front of me. But he didn't know. So it's kind of my responsibility that we can't just throw it out and expect everyone to just be enlightened on what our causes are. You know, like we have to kind of have that very personal connection with them.
I love that. With Elephant, we run into these sort of landmines around language and
Sure.
all the time, because we're sharing all these. Part of our values is to have a sense of humor, which is really dangerous stuff. As maybe
Absolutely.
I mean, you're pretty good with it, but so we'll share like Funny or Die videos. Like one of the worst episodes ever was for me personally was I shared this Funny or Die video that was created by this Asian American lady that was making fun of the notion of yoga just being whitey white all the time.
Sure.
But the way she did it was by saying, what if there was like black people yoga? It would be totally different.
Right.
And then we had all these comments, even not aimed at Funny or Die, but at Elephant, saying this is inappropriate, this is racist, this is la la la.
Sure.
And my reaction was, you're calling me racist,
Right.
So it became this war. And I think it's so powerful for everyone out there to really remember, instead of being defensive or offensive, just say how it makes you feel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can't exist in a world, especially when you live in a world where you're a little bit under a microscope, and people sometimes look. I mean, there are a handful of folks who have said that, I didn't go far enough. Like the TED Talk was like, yeah, that's really easy to walk into your gay-friendly Boulder cafe and have a conversation with a kid.
You're preaching to the choir kind of thing.
Exactly. Like do something significant. Like we're having real struggles and real issues, and I think it is like, this is my journey, and this is how I express it, and you have yours, and to be out there, like you're going to have critics, and I think there's a huge part of the intention behind it. And then also you want to leave yourself open to that dialogue to say, hey, if you think that's offensive, I want to know. You don't necessarily have to call me a racist,
right?
But tell me why it is, and then maybe I can see that, and then next time I would maybe be more sensitive to that, or not.
And you're just not going to win allies by calling them bigots or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's go to that. So after Ignite, I mean, that video is pretty big.
Yeah.
And then you go along for a while. I don't know what.
And it was good. So that was February, and then it was on Upworthy.com.
Wow.
Those guys did it in the beginning of March, and it went to like 500,000 views, which is just bizarre. Like to be to go from my little life in Boulder to being recognized on the streets in LA is just like a bizarre switch in life.
And the coolest thing about it, almost in a silly way, in a directly funny way, is that it's funny. Like it's actually fun to watch. So I really recommend it's in our blog on Elephant Journal, or go to YouTube and find it. It's just fun to watch.
And you kind of take people on that ride. Like I think that's part of that conversation is like there is humor to it, and there is, you can tell people how something hurts or what it feels like and kind of have that vulnerability, but also see the humor in it. I mean, I think that's just so much more relatable. So I did that, and then worked in the summer, wasn't doing any speaking, picked up a couple things here and there, local schools or whatever, but hadn't really done much. And then Andrew does TEDx.
How did it affect you personally? You were like, wow, I can really be a speaker. And
well,
cool.
It's funny because you think that, but then also there's this part of you that's like, who the hell do you think you are? Like, why do I have anything to say? I'm no expert on anything. Like, I just got up there, threw some funny slides together, told a couple stories, and like, I thought it was funny. I thought my buddies would think it was funny, and that's about it. But I wasn't a gender studies major. I was an international business major 20 years ago.
So you feel a little responsibility or something.
A little, and you kind of, do you have all the answers? I'm sure people come to you at the same time and are like, well, tell me about mindfulness. You must be are you proclaimed to be the expert? But people look to you in that way. It's very bizarre. But then there's a realness of being like, no, I'm not. Yeah. Like I know what I know.
I'm transparently like far from perfect, so I don't I don't struggle that much. People don't expect that much of me. People don't. But it was funny, like yesterday at Laugh and Go, I'm vegan. I'm kind of like the Boulder cliche in a lot of ways. Like I'm obviously white, vegan, I bicycle around, I do yoga and all these weird things. I bow before.
You have your own business.
I have my own business, right. That's sort of to do with tech, I've won some Twitter awards and whatever. So I go to the Laughing Goat Cafe and I'm like, do you have anything I can eat? I'm thinking real food, Michael Pollan in my head, that, is healthy, that's not wrapped in plastic. And they look around and they're like, you're weird, basically, but no. And I'm like, can I get some tea? And then I'm like, no, the tea's wrapped in plastic. I'm like, no. I'm like, what can I get? Oh my God. I couldn't find anything that met my ethical standards. And then I finally figured out something I paid with my credit card, and they're like, that's plastic.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And I was like, when I have a choice, I just try and do it. Luckily, they all know me. We were joking the whole time.
Yeah. That's
But anyway,
hilarious. I love
so
that
I
they
do get
called you
called on
out
it.
on
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yes, that is the
yeah,
best.
yeah.
So yeah, so it was, there was part of it, that was a little bit challenging, but I didn't know, like, wasn't. I mean, you probably had a similar experience at some point where you go through your life, and I was pretty psyched with my life. Like, I had the seasonal work. I was able to go see my family back home. I had this a very fulfilling life in Boulder. I didn't really like need or want for much.
Right.
I was very comfortable.
Right.
And then all of a sudden this thing, and when you're like driven your whole life to achieve things or do whatever, and you're like, okay, you do the risk analysis of like, okay, I want to start my own business. This is what it's going to take. Is it worth it or is it not? I've done that a million times throughout my life. I didn't want this. I didn't strive for this. I didn't practice for this. Like, just kind of something that popped up. And then all of a sudden there's this kind of connection with so many people. And I was like, oh, all right, well, I guess let's make room for this somehow in here, So then Andrew does the TEDx thing too. And I was going to apply and then not, 'cause I was home. And so we talked, and one of the most memorable things he said is, I was like, I want it to be bigger. Like, I want it to be not so LGBTQ focused. I want it to be, relatable to other people. So I had said, this is kind of what I was thinking about. And he's like, you can talk about whatever you want. Yeah. He's like, you're in. I think you're going to be great. He's like, but I would dance with the one that brought you, because what you are passionate about and what your story is LGBTQ stuff.
Right.
And how you can relate that experience to other people is really great. And that's amazing. But what what makes it work for you is that you're passionate about. So don't put it on something that you're not passionate about. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like, you don't, and then, any of the stories, like, I can tell them 1,000 times because they're just my stories. I'm not really creating anything. I'm just kind of relating, kind of being a conduit of that information. As opposed to a creator. So he was great.
So yeah, great advice. So what was the story you then decided to share?
So that, well, the two different stories of the Pancake Girl, and then the story of my family's the wedding with my just kind of those.
So Pancake Girl is what I was thinking first. Maybe just touch on that.
Yeah. So at the Walnut, at the South Side where I worked, it was, I had become kind of gender nonconforming and would shave my head and kind of do all these different things.
And gender nonconforming just means you didn't have your perm and
exactly.
All that
I didn't look like a girl. I didn't
wear wearing heels.
Yeah, like the definition of a girl: no makeup, short hair, boys' clothes. It was kind of how I just felt more comfortable being
Cargo
in the world.
Shorts, whatever. Yeah.
Exactly, and a very welcoming place where at the South Side, like, they just want you to be you in all your weirdness. Yeah. Like, they just embrace it there. Yeah. Exactly, weirdness is. And individuality is encouraged, which is great. And Julia's awesome and has a great personality, but she didn't want a bunch of hers. She wanted a bunch of individuals. It's kind of what made that place great. So anyway, there, kids would come in and in that location, it's by campus. People do a lot of hiking. Like, you get a lot of people that aren't Boulder people that kind of come through the South Side. And so you get people that you weren't used to seeing, and you had a bunch of little kids that would, not say anything, and they knew me and they knew I was a girl and all those things, but then you had these kids that would kind of challenge you. And then that also from like public restrooms and malls or in airports or whatever, being challenged, like, are you a boy or are you a girl? But I felt so safe.
And that kind of blew my mind. I guess I'm so naive that when you were saying just a couple days ago you were going into an airport.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, every time I go through an airport as a regular experience, it's like
people are like, do you have the wrong bathroom? Or?
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and a little bit different now, and I've kind of changed energetically my approach to walking in a bathroom. I used to be like I would shaved head, t-shirt, jeans, like, it was kind of pushing it a little bit, but I would, have my little rolling case and go in the first bathroom and just try to get in and get out as fast as I could, so nobody would say anything. And, usually people would be like, hey, wait, are you in the right? But, it would just challenge folks in their understanding. And now, instead of...
And like the girl, they didn't mean to be offensive generally?
I don't know about that. I mean,
sometimes they were.
It was just a direct challenge of like, you are in the wrong, you don't belong here, you don't look like what that's supposed to look like. And, with that kind of head down, very introverted look, it was kind of like, are you so distracted? Are you so not mindful that you just walked in the wrong bathroom? Where when you walk in, like, head up, eye contact, smiling, like, people know you're paying attention. You still get double takes, but it's just energetically the way I present in that.
They're like, she knows what she's doing.
Just changes that a bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, all of, you can't, and I had several bathroom confrontations, but you can't do it with the little kid. But I'm in this place in the South Side where I feel so safe, where I feel so supported all the time by my friends, by so many people that are there. But then we would just dig so deep that someone would question that.
So the kids would basically always say,
yeah,
are you a boy?
Are you a boy? Or are you a girl? Or mom is, and the parents would like freak out,
right?
Because they would know that it's an inappropriate question, that it's, but the kid has no like social graces. They're like 3. They just want to know. And then I would just get so angry. Then all of a sudden I had these kids in my life. Friends of mine had kids. My sister had kids. And so there were just these kids, and when you really know kids, they just really don't care. Like, you're not taught.
They just want to know.
You don't come out hating anything. Like, you're taught to hate. You're taught to understand. Like, you love kind of unconditionally as like a little being on this planet. All the other stuff is learned. So these kids just wanted to know. Like, they just wanted to know, all right, well, are you a boy or are you a girl? It was just very simple. So then having this conversation, and I was ready to kind of go off on this kid, and it certainly wasn't just about this kid, but pent up for so many, of not having the words, of not being able to say something, of not being able to be like, how do you walk in this place that's like, half these folks are gay, half the people that come in here are gay, and you have never taught, as your kid, never seen anybody that doesn't look the way you think they're supposed to look. Like, it was just such an offense to me.
Yeah.
And I took that place so personally. But then you realize, you're like, that's not going to get me anywhere. Like, those people, it's going to just be more awkward if I have this like very aggressive conversation with them. So you look at the kid and you just like have a real conversation.
And I love that. It was so profound and so casual how you said it, that you had your like Gloria Steinem quotes or your whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Your like preconceived, like rational things to kind of go to war with.
Because we've all done that. You've been in the same situation over and over, and you're like, oh, I should have said that.
I'm ready.
I wish I would have. Oh, can you imagine? Look, I would have gotten him with that. It's like the perfect zinger.
So you had your chance.
Yes.
You're all ready.
And you like, and it's multiple occasions where you don't say it, and then you fixate on it afterwards on a run or on a hike or in bed when you can't sleep. Of like, I should have said this, but then you're like, that's not going to get anybody any. It's like, what is that creating in the world that's good? Like, give people a break.
So you did like 2 things or 3 things that I found really interesting. You mentioned it so casually in that TED Talk, where you had all those like preconceived rational things to go with, but then you like you said you took a breath, which I think is really important, obviously. You kind of let go of all that stuff. You got down on the child's level. You knelt down.
Absolutely.
And you looked at the kid directly in the eyes. I thought that was just so powerful. Like, it's such a change from like, you have all your thoughts that make a lot of sense. They're not bad thoughts.
Sure. But I also,
but they don't work.
Exactly. And you take a deep breath, and the first breath was not a relaxing breath.
Right.
It was low, pulling the trigger back, or like pulling the bow. Like, it was that, like, I was ready to explode. My rant.
Like Hunger Games.
Exactly. My 3-minute non-stop without a breath rant was coming from that breath. And then
the parents were like,
and then I looked down inside, totally, because I'm sure I was like, you have this kind of presence in, they're sitting and I'm standing, and you're just kind of ready for it. And so I took this really deep breath to prepare myself kind of for that battle. And then you see a 3-year-old in front of you, and you're like, God, it was like, I felt like a monster in that moment of like, how can I unleash this rage of mine that's been building for years on this 3-year-old who really doesn't care? So then then I was instantly like stopped and had to, then the second breath was the like, okay, get like, who do you want to be in this world? What kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the person that wants to yell at 3-year-olds? It's a terrible way to go through that anxiety, and that, because I would walk up to tables and I would see a young kid and I would know it was coming. Like, I would know that question was coming, and I would just be so angry. I'm just like, I'm not that person. It's not who I want to be. It's not how I want to exist in the world.
One other thing just to acknowledge, it's so powerful that children are, like, we just shared this video about it was like in Malaysia, and there were 2 tribes that had been at war, and this little boy had this crush on this little girl, and they were in the public school, so the tribes are mixed up, and the tribes were the ones at war, and the little boy was talking about how he had a crush on this girl, and they like just really didn't care about the whole like warfare thing.
Right, exactly. Like I feel like
children
in that,
just don't have, like you said, they don't have this. We have to teach them prejudice, right?
absolutely, and that they just want to follow their heart.
Right.
Like it isn't as complicated as you think when you can see it through their eyes of just like how incredibly simple and glorious and and those questions they just want to ask that about everything. You know what I mean?
Why
Is this a fork or is this a spoon?
Right.
You're like, why is it a fork? They're just so crazy.
The fork's like, shut up.
Exactly. Totally.
God damn it.
I'm not a spoon. I never wanted to be a spoon.
I'm a spork.
Exactly.
Right.
So I feel like kids are so great in that way of just this realness and just like vulnerability without even trying. Like
so you told just to continue,
Sure.
I love the story.
Yeah, no problem.
It's in the video, but
No. So I just quiet down next to her and I was like, I know it's confusing to you. I have my hair short like a boy's and I wear boys' clothes, but I'm a girl. And you know how sometimes you like to wear your pink dress, because this kid was in like a pink fairy princess dress, blonde hair, ringlets, curls, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like she couldn't have been more of a girl. And I was like, and sometimes you like to wear your comfy jammies. Well, I'm more of a comfy jammies kind of girl. It's just like what came to me kind of in that moment. And also, I feel like I had that conversation as many times as I had like the, Betty Friedan quotes ready to like fly off. You're also like, well, that's, if it was. But then I also kind of had to have conversations similar to that with my friends' kids' friends. Mm-hmm. And you're like, it's just a kid, and I know that kid, and I know that kid loves me, and I know that kid just wants to understand. So there was this compassion that came from those guys. So then I, and then this kid, like, does not miss a beat. And it's like, my favorite pajamas are purple with fish. Can I get a pancake? Like, it wasn't about, are you a boy or a girl? Like, here's, like, all right, fine, you're a girl. Where's my pancake?
It's so
you know
profound.
What I mean? Like, let's move on. Why are we stuck on this? Why are we still talking about this?
It's so profound. And I think that's where, hopefully, we're going as a society, where it's as ordinary as brushing your teeth or wanting pancakes or... Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that fluidity exists and the exposure that those kids get, and anything from, like, a place like the South Side to, what Facebook is doing. Like, when you're exposed to having all these different choices and you see all these different things, you have this empathy for these things. And my hope would be, like, I know that kid absolutely changed my perspective. This was the first time I ever softened in the face of feeling attacked with this kid. And my hope would be, like, the next time they see somebody that, like, doesn't really look like they think they should look or whatever, they, like, remembered the time that I was nice to their kid. And that's it. Like, those little connections, like, that's how that change is happening. Not, laws or legislation or any of that stuff. Like, we have so many interactions where we can be real with each other in our everyday lives, that's a societal shift to me. That's where it comes from.
So you told another very human story in that video, which you can watch the video if you want to get that one. But then, so that video goes seriously viral.
Well, I was in, and that one was like 12 minutes, and I was like, kind of downplaying myself a little bit. It was like, well, the other one's 5 minutes. You'll watch anything for 5 minutes, but there's no way that anybody's going to watch 12 minutes
of someone talking about like acceptance or
exactly. It just isn't that big of a deal.
Right.
And then had sent it to the folks at Upworthy again, because Adam and I at that point had a relationship and didn't really hear anything.
Adam at Upworthy,
yeah. And and didn't really hear anything. And then about a month later, all of a sudden my Twitter starts to like explode, and I was like, what is going on? This is so weird. And not that the numbers ever mattered.
Had Upworthy shared it at that point? Or?
They were just starting to. They were testing different headlines.
They take their time. Yeah.
Exactly. So they were putting it out there, and I was like, this thing is going to languish at like 100,000, and that's fine. And the numbers never really matter.
100,000 is pretty good.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Which I think is lovely, and you always, I never did it for that reason. I did it because I was passionate about it and let it land in the world where it may. But then those guys picked it up, and then that one went crazy. And so that that one was within 24 hours was over 1 million, which was really twice what the other one had done in its whole kind of span. And
now it's at 4 or 5 million.
I think it's there's a million of them through the TED site, and then it's over 4 at the other one.
And it was featured on the cover of TED.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, which was great. I mean,
so you're walking around town all full of yourself now. You've changed.
It's so funny. So when these things have happened, I went to this event that I was helping with, and at this point, people are like stopping me on the street and being like, "Hey, I loved your talk. It's really great."
By the way, hey, I love your talk.
Oh, you're sweet.
Yeah.
So I saw these people at this event, and it was like a cocktail hour after this. I was on the production team, and so we're having this cocktail hour, and these people are kind of like pointing. And so I'm like, "Oh."
You're like, is she a boy or a girl?
Exactly. I was like, "Well, I'm gonna go over and have this conversation." Like, I'll be like, "Hey, yeah, it's me from the video. It's out of context. It's weird." So I kind of stroll up with my, kind of big chest, and I was like, "Hey, I just wanted you to know that it was, that's me from the video." And the woman's like, "What?" And I was like, "No, the YouTube video, and the pancake girl." And the woman's like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "It's me. Heart equals heart." I'm like, "I'm Ash." I was like, "It's me from the YouTube video."
You're just pointing at me.
Yeah. Exactly. And the woman's like, "Actually, we thought you worked here. We're just trying to get some drinks." And I was in like a blue button down and black pants, like the entire catering staff. So it was very like the humility had set in at that point. It's like, actually, not everybody knows who you are or really gives a shit about what you say. But then, so I went and got drinks. I was like, well, I at least owe you a round of drinks for this awkwardness. So I got those, and I told him about the video, and so then we worked it out. But there was this very bizarre thing of like people, and it's funny because of being gender nonconforming in so many situations. Like I would get stared at, and it would make me angry. I feel like my reaction would be being angry. And now there's this different version of ways.
It's so nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like people, they appreciate what you said, or they remembered or resonated or whatever. And the reason I did that talk and kind of the genesis of it was like, you would never know what it would feel like to have to come out as gay. Like you can imagine what that would feel like, but you don't ever are going to know what that's going to feel like. And so the whole point of that talk was to be like, this is as close as I can, like somatically, I can tell you the feelings inside your body, and there's been another time in your life where you felt those feelings, and that's what it feels like.
What are some of those other? That was so powerful. You started the video, I think, that way, or the speech that way. What are some of? So you were saying we all have a closet, or multiple closets.
Yeah. And
so what did you mean by that?
Things that we don't want to share with each other. So it could be, a lot of things that happen that are in that same, whether like, you've cheated on somebody, or you have to declare bankruptcy, or you've had an abortion, or you have dyslexia, or a million other things. They have these negative connotations, which is always such a struggle for me to kind of put sexuality in that. But they're things that we don't deem as socially acceptable, or that we might be judged about.
Whatever it is that we're suppressing.
Exactly. And plenty of people it's been mental illness, depression, bipolar. I've got a lot of stuff from folks that were guys from coming back from the war that were PTSD and just didn't want to tell people. There's that, whole wounded warrior in the project, but then the concept of like, you're not strong enough if you can't handle that, and kind of admitting to their spouse or their employer or their friends that they have that issue. It's another one of those things. It's like, when you're about a surprise party and you just need to like not blow it for like 2 weeks. It's like all you have to do is like get to 2 weeks, and it like stresses you out, and you're gonna say something stupid, and you're gonna like ruin the whole thing. Yeah. It's like that feeling for like years.
Except it's not a fun party.
Exactly.
It's like
this thing that
hard.
You think people will think less of you because, or change their opinion of you, or not be friends with you.
Keeping a surprise party secret for a long time could be awesome. Yeah. I have a fun secret.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah. But like secrets are just so tough sometimes. Right. So especially when it's something that you're excited about, if you want to like tell people. I remember that feeling of, and I was in love with somebody. It was the first time in my whole life I was actually in love with someone. I like all of a sudden all the movies made sense. Like everything made sense to me. So you want to like share this awesomeness, but there's this back end of it that you are afraid that people are then going to judge that, and it's so personal. It's kind of the same thing with the with the folks with PTSD of like, you finally figured out what is wrong, and you want to get help, but then what are people going to think of you when you do?
And it's even with PTSD. We just had a gentleman on the show talking about that, actually.
Okay.
That if they report it to the VA, then it's harder for them to get jobs. It's actually on their record.
Absolutely.
They're, like, branded.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. It makes it. The whole thing is just so crazy. So that kind of relatability of like, in coming out of the closet is one thing, but like, you know what it's like to be in love, and I know what it's like to be in love, and you'll never know what it's like to love. I guess maybe not you, because you seem like a pretty enlightened fellow, but I feel like
seem is
exactly. I know it's pay no attention.
Yeah.
So,
I
but
bottled up a lot of stuff. I've
right,
suppressed it just so I look good.
Yes, it's working.
Really good.
So very.
Oh yeah.
I would say.
You too.
So thanks. So I would say that you know, that you would never know what it's like to love somebody of the same sex in the same way that you would romantically.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But you know what it's like to love somebody. So you and I can relate on what it's like to be in love, what it's like to have those fireworks, what it's like to have all of that, what that heartbreak feels like. Does it really matter who broke my heart? Not really.
Right.
It just matters that you know what it feels like. And so that was kind of the thought of this, and I kind of expected just to be like, hey, this is what it feels like to be gay. But then it took on this whole world of its own of people interrelating to things that weren't, I was like out of the picture. All of a sudden it was somebody, you know, that needed to end their relationship with their husband relating to somebody who had just come back from war, and they knew what it was like to keep a secret. And it had nothing to do with me or gay. It just was them kind of connecting, and that was, for whatever reason, why this one took off kind of to a greater degree, is people want to feel relatable, and you just don't want to feel alone, and there's nothing that's lonelier than a closet, no matter what it is.
Right. And you said it was so eloquent, all closets are the same color or the same, look the same when the door is closed, I guess.
Exactly. Like when you're in it, you don't know what color your walls are or my walls are.
Right, yours are rainbow and mine are whatever.
Whatever it is, like whatever that plaster is, like you just know what it feels like
bland
to be
white,
in there.
beige.
Exactly.
Freckled, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. So there's also this whole conversation. I have tons of notes I should get to, but they're so far away.
It's fine.
But there's this whole conversation around gender fluidity. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, so I think, you know, in the last, and again, I'm not a scholar on kind of the development of it, but I think that it kind
everyone thinks you're an expert now.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. That you have to look at these things. There's a brilliant doctor in Boulder gave this scenario of like a slot machine, where there's like sex, which is like biologically what you are, gender, which is, you know, how, I guess, gender identity, so how do you feel on the inside, gender expression, how do you express yourself to the world, and sexual preference, so who do you want to be sexually intimate with. And that those things, a lot of times, all the cherries line up for a lot of people, but they aren't interrelated, and to think of sex and gender as two totally different things. And so, you know, Facebook is a perfect example of, you know, an entire list, 51 ways you can describe your gender. It's so much more than just about sex, and how do you kind of explain that? And that, you know, now, and granted, this is extremely regional, but I feel like, you know, if you talk to teens to 20-somethings, like you could take Sally to prom one year and Steven to prom the next year, and it's just kind of like the way that it goes. You don't have to like sign the pact to say, okay, if I'm going to be a lesbian, I'm signing up for no kids, cats, softball, and a Subaru. And that's it. And if you don't want all four of those things,
you could be a lesbian in one of those pink dresses or what.
You can, you know what I mean? There's this fluidity, and you can have a family, and it doesn't have to define you. It is something about you, but it isn't the only thing that defines you. I'm a lesbian, therefore these are all the things in my life. These are all the things in my life. One of them is I'm in love with a woman. Same thing with, you know, gay men and different stereotypes. But that there's this kind of fluidity of you don't have to make a choice. You love who you fall in love with. I mean, I think there's like this simplicity around that. And then how do you want to identify gender-wise? Like you want to be able to have a box for everybody. And what it feels like to not have a box to check. And we had talked about earlier, if you know you have a couple that's together and they have kids, but they're not legally married. If it's, you know, single, married, divorced, widowed, you don't have a box, you feel so uncounted, even if it's some stupid survey that means nothing, let alone, you know, legal documents, paperwork at your healthcare provider, any of those things. Like,
it's almost the very casualness of the survey that reflects that society just doesn't even think about it.
They don't even care. And especially in a healthcare setting, that's really, really hard. And how does it affect me if there's 50 choices? Like, I'm super clear on who I am, so I think the pushback from like, there's too many choices, why are there so many things? Because to actually sit there and examine yourself challenges people to do that. So I think that's kind of some of the pushback.
Pushback on that 51 choices or whatever.
50, like, why would we ever have 51 choices? You're either a guy or a girl. It's like the simplicity of it, but you're like, but how does it affect me? And even though 90% of the population might pick two of these things,
Sure.
to give those options to other people, how does it affect me at all? If I'm not looking, those boxes don't apply to me, but I'm really glad that they apply to somebody, because then somebody is included and represented, and that their self-identification is validated, even if they're just checking it on Facebook, and that you're not the only one, because other people are going to do the same thing. That like sense of community, I think, is incredible.
So only a few years Facebook had how many choices?
Two.
Yeah,
I mean, it was sex,
right?
Not gender. You know, two different things. So it was, are you male or are you female? Just when's your birthday? That was it.
Right.
Like, it's just like one of the things that you pick, like a million ways. And then there was this push and need for inclusiveness. And when you're looking at, like, you know, one of the single broadest international communities of people, for all the good and the bad that Facebook causes, that you know, that you want everybody to have a place.
What about her hair? I was just told to fix my hair. I can't have spiky hair.
I know.
God,
I know.
It's a little bit unequal.
It is totally.
Yeah, a little prejudice from Shannon.
A little bit.
Back there. That's all right. So what I love is that Facebook's changed so rapidly. They are so representative. Society is changing so rapidly, like a president to say whatever he just said last year.
Yeah.
Like, do you feel super psyched right now on where society's going?
Yeah.
Obviously not where it is. It's got a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, and it's incredible, and I feel incredibly lucky that the cause that I feel that I closely identify with has had such great strides. So if you take, you know, and again, relatable to me, if you take a lesbian who's 80, one who's 60, one who's 40, and one who's 20, their experience in just that amount of time is just so incredibly
in the West,
different.
obviously, right?
Obviously, yeah. And you know, in the West, and then also, you know, regionally, certainly there are different experiences.
Right.
But I would say
your family's from Ohio. Maybe it's different there.
Yeah, you know, a little bit, but Ohio is incredibly is relatively left, and a lot of that is driven by a strong union representation, teachers, manufacturing, things like that. There's this rural component, but you have this liberal version, and so you have these unions, and now we're kind of coming together and saying, hey, these these rights are everybody's rights. Equality is what we're looking for. And you know, in Toledo, the town that I grew up in, they had city same-sex partner benefits before we had them in Colorado. So they just kind of these pockets of amazing.
Right.
I feel like that happened everywhere where people feel supported. So I feel like there is this shift that's happening, and it's almost just in the expectations. Like I would have said 20 years ago, I figured maybe my kids would have seen marriage equality. Like it never would have happened in my lifetime.
So cool.
And all of a sudden it just like flips. And then I think the critical part to think, as the movement goes forward, who are we leaving behind? And the stand that was made that unequivocally we are including trans folks, we are not dropping the T, even though we could make so much greater gains if we drop trans, because that like freaks people out. We will not leave our brothers and sisters behind as a movement, and that kind of, I think, slowed but gave the movement so much more strength and power moving forward. That we
there was
have
a
to
conversation around that.
Very much so.
Like maybe let's get to them next.
Yeah, like we can get marriage equality, we can get same-sex partner benefits, we can get employment non-discrimination passed if we drop trans. So let's get it done.
Right.
And
I guess there's always that pragmatic
absolutely.
versus...
I think that that's part of it, and that there were people, allies specifically, that stood up and said, no, there's no way we're doing this without everybody. Yeah. So I think it's incredibly promising. It's also...
Because that's fundamentally the point. Everybody. Like everybody.
Everybody, exactly.
Black, white, rich, poor, anything.
Regardless. And I mean, but I think there's a responsibility in the rapid acceptance of the movement and our presence of society that the LGBTQ community is everywhere. We are across socioeconomic strata. We are across racial and religious affiliations. We are everywhere. So we have a responsibility to unite those other marginalized groups and bring everybody up. It does us no good to have marriage equality rights when immigration rights are still on the table, and that, you know, anybody is politically fighting for over scraps where, well, we can't get immigration done because we already used all of our political capital on ending Don't Ask, Don't Tell. that's outrageous that anyone would settle for that, and that we would claim a victory when other people that are also marginalized would have a defeat. Like that, it's enraging, and we have a responsibility, I feel like, to bring everybody up.
That's wonderful. I mean, we've all seen really sad examples of the opposite, where like one group, without mentioning specific groups perhaps, you know, goes through a really difficult experience, but then gets equal rights, and then doesn't want other groups to have equal rights.
Sure.
Is there anything I haven't covered? I know there's a lot.
No, I mean, I feel like we're good. I mean, the only other thing is, you know, I know that the broadcast goes out to everybody, but the feeling of Boulder and just the love that I have for being able to be on 2 different stages here, and knowing that I could just like jump and be caught by a town that I, you know, isn't my hometown, but a town that I feel very close to is inspiring, and that there are Ignites and TEDx's all over the world, and that those are communities of people that put out a net. So if you can get involved in any way, like your community will catch you. Like, you just have to believe in that.
Yeah, I think you made the community want to catch you, though. I mean, that's what was so inspiring about that Ignite video, is you could say Boulder, you're all affluent, you don't care about diversity, you don't care about la. I'm going to give you some wisdom that I have. Instead, you said, hey, you spoke to the best of everyone, which I think
absolutely is because, like you said, like everybody wants to be a better person. Like, there's nobody, whatever their definition of being a better person is, like, that's what we all strive for every day. Like, I want to go to sleep, and so many people, even if they are absolutely politically opposite of me, they just want to be a better person by the end of the day. So how do you exist in the world and do that? And sometimes that's self-serving, and sometimes it's not. But you just, you know, trusting that kid, and like, you just, I don't know, go through the world believing the good in people. I think you reap so much more than just not trusting people. And yeah, you know, you get punched every now and then, but more often than not, my experience has been you get hugged. So take my chances. Yay, hug it out.
Well, thank you, Ash Beckham.
Yeah, that's great.
You can find us on youtube.com/Waylon H. Lewis. You can find Ash Beckham everywhere. It's hard not to, but check out her videos for sure. And you can also find us on Spotify, or as it's technically known, SoundCloud. Thank you so much.